Okay, I'm back with another interesting take. So I previously posted a short talking about the Stanford prison experiment, the Milgram experiment, and all of that was how does that relate to the current red pill manosphere kind of influence? And the reason that this stood out to me was because a big part of why they did these experiments is because they wanted to understand how the folks or like just the normal everyday soldiers in Nazi Germany had turned into Nazis, right? Like you went from just being a person that was in the military to a person that was a part of a full-blown genocide, right? Like one of the most historic notably, right? And they wonder and they ponder how did this happen. So they came up with these experiments to see the impact of authority on the mindset, on the psyche. Is this something that people are born with inherently? Is this something that can be brought out of people and so on and so forth, right? So that's part of it. But before I got to that point, the other argument that was particularly interesting to me, and I'm sure that nobody wants to hear about this anymore, 100 men versus the gorilla. And so this is where it started to tip for me. So before I got to this conversation about the Stanford prison experiment and so on, this 100 men versus a gorilla thing really had me side eyeing the shit out of people because I'm like, yo, bro, why do you want to fight a gorilla? But it was more than that because the arguments, right, that you were seeing across spaces was a lot of women are just like, yeah, you're not going to beat a gorilla. There's a lot of people that was like, yo, why are y'all having this argument? You're not going to beat a gorilla. And there was a bunch of men, right? Like, and this very much can be algorithmic favor that just kind of leaned me into this perception. But a bunch of dudes were saying, like, yeah, it's 100 men. Like, it was mad dudes. Like, gorillas will get tired, they'll get exhausted, they'll this, they'll that. It's like, yeah, the gorilla might kill like 15 people, 25 people, but you're not gonna kill 100 men. He's gonna get tired, he's gonna this, he's gonna that. And that was when it dawned on me. It dawned on me that the win meant more than the 10, 15, or 25 people that died in order for them to say that they won. There is something perpetually strange to me about, yeah, just a couple dozen folks dying just doesn't matter. That's inconsequential. There is something that happens in the conditioning or in the growth process of young men that make them have this ideology that, yeah, like if a couple people die, but we got the win, we still got the W, so what? Why does it mean that much to you? And so from there, it goes into this space of this is why I hate to say it that the president came to be, right? Because I remember watching comments where dudes was really like, yeah, we got the win. And I'm like, yo, bro, do you not understand that this is not a football game, bro? Like this is sorry. When I tell you I felt like I was losing my mind because I'm like, yo, there's no way that they're looking at it from the perspective of it's a win, but they are. But they are. Now, here is where the experiments and the red pill concept come in. So the Stanford prison experiment, short version of it is that they had a bunch of, kids sign up, young men, and they assigned half of the group as guards, half of the group as prisoners, and they proceeded to put them in a fake jail and act out these jail sequences, right? Like, and just you locked up and you're a part of this process because we want to see what happens to the mind of the prison guards and the prisoners to see what happens. And, like, again, how did we get to the Nazi Germany kind of buildup? How did you get all of these people to comply with this sort of behavior? And it's the same concept because they had to end this experiment early. They had to shut it down because one, they saw the psychological beat down that the prisoners were taking because they kind of took the experiment too far. They didn't really set the parameters to maintain voluntary participation and that sort of thing. So it got a little bit, it leaned into the unethical side. But what's tough about it is that this experiment did not give the appropriate takeaways from the fact that the prisoners emotionally, psychologically took a L, but the guards, these are regular college kids, they turned into full blown abusive people. Like they literally quoted that they became satanic in nature. They got to go home, they got to come back, and it was a regular work day for them, but they were practically abusing these prisoners. Meanwhile, they recruited them from colleges. But it dawned on me that there is something that happens in the male psyche, in the male conditioning process, that brings them to this place of, I got to get the win. And it becomes morphed. The aggression changes. And this is how come I watch these things. And this stands out specifically because we had this onset of relationships that just went bad, right? Like we had the Offset and Cardi thing where Offset is like, yo, you my BM, and he became territorial, right? You have this whole thing with DDG, and it's like, yo, you was bruising up the Little Mermaid. Like, what about that dynamic made you feel like you needed to assert yourself rather than compromise and agree with her, right? What about this situation? Did you not have the ability to walk away? And there's so much more. Like, I hate to even bring this person in this loop because I feel like this is our sacred space. But even this whole conversation with Blake Lively and Justin Baldoni, I wish I may come back and talk about that one a little bit more too, because there is something about male assertion versus male agreement that is happening, and I don't really get it. But these experiments and this emergence of red pill, it makes me sit with it a bit more. And I think I'm going to end on this point. You know how, like, there's conversations about who you don't want to have as a certain boss because of whatever reason or another. The one thing I don't ever want to work with, and I say this all the time, I don't like scary ass people. I don't like scary people because you can't trust somebody that's afraid. They're not thinking straight, they don't know how to strategize, and they are always in a state of panic, and you don't know what that's going to look like. Because remember, when someone is afraid, if they are insecure, emotionally unsafe, you got two outcomes. You got fight, you got flight. You got the person that's going to tell, that's going to be like, "Oh no, I don't know nothing about that. I don't this, I don't that." And then you got the other person that's going to act like you the threat, even though they showed up just in their feelings. And it's this kind of thing. And I think that the male experience, because the quote unquote alpha male, the quote unquote alpha male, once upon a time, looked something like the guy that can fight, the guy that can keep a beast away, the guy that could hunt, that sort of thing. And now, alpha males, they vary, to say the least, right? Like, and it's fine because we're not in a society where survival looks one way, right? The guy that looks good in the public eye is not one size. And that's because we're not in the same kind of physical danger that we once upon a time were in. We now have to survive emotionally, psychologically, financially, spiritually. There's so many different ways that we can posture this way. And what's tough is we have people that I believe are fragile in nature that have had the opportunity to get a mic and congregate. And in essence, they're kind of posturing like tough guys. But I don't want to be mean. So I'm going to leave it there. And I'll be back because I have to still write that paper. So I'm going to come back and talk about like what I found, what I understood. I'm going to talk to God about it too, because I feel like this might be related to when Adam got pressed in the garden, like, yo, come out, let me talk to you. When God was like, yo, come, let me talk to you real quick. And he said, I don't got no clothes on. And the short version of it is that when it got real and God started pressing him about like what you got going on, bro really was like, Bro, why you sent this girl here? And did not take accountability because he got insecure. It sounds like people are kind of living in their Adam curse, but I digress. We'll be back. We'll be back. Thank you so much for hanging out with me for a little bit today. And yeah, I'll touch base with y'all soon enough. Peace. Bye.